Hello and welcome to What's the Tea with ACP, where we talk to artists about their lives and explore what's going on in their experiences, whether that be in their art, their social experiences, or just the tea of the day. This week, we are going to be talking with Melanie Bacaling and Monique Gaffney. We will talk about utility and what it's like being behind the scenes of the stage and how their experiences have shaped their career in life thus far. So, our first guest is going to be Melanie Bacaling. She is. Let me give y'all her bio, honey. So originally from Chicago, Illinois, Melanie Bacaling is an active director, stage manager, and producer in the opera industry. She was named an emerging artist for Boston Lyric Opera's 18 and 19 and 1920 seasons. Boston Lyric Opera also appointed Miss Bacaling as the company intimacy advocate, where she is developing protocols of safety, equity, and ethical conduct in the opera rehearsal room. Miss Bacaling has held production engagements with Santa Fe Opera, Boston Lyric Opera, Des Moines Metro Opera, Opera Omaha, Washington Concert Opera, Aspen Opera Center, Sun Valley Music Festival, Boston Conservatory at Berkeley, and the Longy School of Music at Bard College. Her upcoming engagements include joining the staging staff at LA Opera for the spring 2021 season. She's currently producing a podcast for BLO, Boston Lyric Opera, called It's Score, S in parentheses, core, which seeks to delve into the inner workings of the opera industry and highlight voices of the BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, People of Color, and LGBTQIA communities. Also a vocalist and pedagogue, Miss Bacaling holds a Master of Music in Vocal Performance and Pedagogy from the Boston Conservatory. Her preferred pronouns are she, hers, and she identifies as a member of the BIPOC community. Welcome, Miss Melanie Bacaling. Hello.
Hello, thank you so much. It's good to
Thank
see
you so
you.
much. It is so lovely to have you. We are so excited to have you. And we're gonna get into the tea. So I would like to introduce. I'm gonna pop you back down, introduce our next guest, and then we're gonna bring you in together. How about that? Perfect. So our next guest is Monique Gaffney. So a little bit about Monique. Having recently showcased her 10 years of professional theatrical hair and makeup artisanal experience with Broadway's Tina Turner, Ms. Gaffney's work has also been with Santa Fe Opera, Opera Philadelphia, on the cover of Classical Singer magazine, and on the faces of Tyne Daly, Sutton Foster, Kelly O'Hara, Don Lewis, Kevin Burdett, Brenda Ray, and Marietta Simpson, just to name a few. Mentored by famed operatic wig designer David Zimmerman, she recently launched her own line of custom hand-tied wigs as her response to the COVID-19 shutdown of Broadway. Snatchin' Wigs, that's with an N and a Z, was born out of their belief that the success lies in the ability to be adaptable. Miss Gaffney consistently welcomes new stages and places to showcase her creative skills and talents. Welcome to Miss Monique Gaffney. Hello.
Hi.
How are you, darling?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm doing fabulously. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you. I'm going to bring Melanie back into the conversation.
Hey,
Hey,
Melanie.
good to see you.
So, today's tea, I came up with a definition of utility or the word utility. I chose this word because what you both do, well, in the span of your backstage experience, um, is so vital to what happens on the stage, right? All of those things that you contribute are so useful. And I feel like utility is the perfect kind of word to highlight that. So I'm going to give you the definition of that right now. So, the one I'm going to choose a definition from the long list of definitions. So this is the adjective. Capable of serving as a substitute in various roles or position, a vital hand at subjects. So it's kind of perfect because that's in essence what you do. Every time you go to a new job, you take your skills and your experience and you put them into that new situation, and you have utilitarian skills.
Yeah.
So that's why I picked utility for this week's tea.
That's a good word. You did a good job with that,
Listen,
Ellie.
let me tell y'all something, okay? People are finding words that end with T. Know what you want to say. I found a lot of interesting ways to figure that out. I also want to remind the audience that our guests are artists, and right now we all know that it is a bit difficult in our field. Things are happening where who knows what the next thing might be. So I want to encourage our guests who are watching to please support our guests via Venmo, donate what you can so that we can contribute back to our guests for being on the show and helping us out and being just such amazing colleagues and friends. Um, I'm going to leave that up a little bit because I see that we're starting to get a few more viewers in, and I want you all to be able to be supported accordingly. So I want to talk a little bit just about how you all are doing first. How is life? What's life looking like, with, well, COVID-19 and the pandemic and work and all of the things. So, Monique, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's been going on with you in the COVID?
Well, COVID has been a very, very interesting experience for me. I initially, because we only thought we were shutting down for like a month, I was like, yes, I get a 1-month vacation to do nothing. And I needed a vacation. And then 1 month turned into 6 months, which now I don't think I'll be going back to work until 2021, at least to my job until 2021. I'll probably find something to do until then. I'm going to have to. But it's been, I've been trying to be as positive as I possibly can be and find the joy and stay present. And I really took advantage of spending time with my family. I mean, my family's only in New Jersey and I live in New York, so they're very close. But I mean, on March 12th, when Broadway was shut down, I hopped in my car, went to Jersey, and I stayed there for as long as I wanted to. So it was nice being there with my family. And so now I'm just trying to figure out how to best, use my time, this time that I have. So yes, I do, have my business and it's growing, and I'm trying to collaborate with different companies and see how I can use my platform in the best way possible. So trying to stay positive. That's really just been the thing, because mental health is so important. And I feel like it's very easily to kind of, when you're stuck with your thoughts, to kind of go more towards the negative, but I'm really just trying to stay positive. So yeah.
Great. Well, I think you've been doing that. I think I mean, I can see from the things that you're creating and doing, I feel like that's where you're headed. Yeah.
I'm working on it.
What about you, Melanie? What's going on in your life? How are you doing?
Oh man, I am actually doing fantastically right now because yesterday I celebrated my 30th birthday. The big it's so funny because at the beginning of 2020, I was like, I was supposed to be starting at LA Opera actually this past week. And I was like, my birthday's on a Saturday this year. It'll be the big 30th birthday. I'm going to be in LA. I'll be making new friends, like thinking like all these like big plans that might happen. And obviously that is not the case. But my beautifully amazing family, who I've been so blessed to be able to stay with during this quarantine time, threw me this big surprise family get together, just like our immediate selves. And I have never felt so much love in one day. And so I'm really, really counting, and just like Monique, you were saying, finding the joy, I've been trying to count the wins of what is there to be grateful for right now, and really grounding myself in that gratitude, and grounding myself in the gratitude of the love that I have of the people with me, but also the health of my loved ones and myself, and using that as the energy to be more creative and get more going out of whatever it is that will happen in this quarantine time as long as it lasts. So feeling very, very grateful right now.
That's awesome. So, also, again, happy birthday.
Thank you.
That's amazing. Burr, 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 burr. So I also some of the things I wanted to talk to you all about were your specific gifts and what you're kind of focusing on in the future. I mean, whether that be business wise or in your personal life, but also how are you doing on an artistic level? Like, I mean, I've thankfully been able to just hop into a bunch of like organizations and just stuff and keeping myself, well, extremely busy. But how are you feeling artistically? Whoever wants to go, please.
I feel like I have been challenged artistically, but I'm invigorated in that because we're all having to get more creative. Like, what does making art look like, especially for those of us that work in the live arts industry? What does that look like on more of a digital platform or a platform where, now all of a sudden we have to have social distancing guidelines and things that consider our health that we haven't really had to consider before. So I have also, like you, Elliott, found myself incredibly busy, actually way busier than I've ever anticipated, which I'm so grateful for, and all the different projects that I've been able to work on. And also my fellow artist friends, there's a lot of us who have gotten together and are like, what can we do? Like, what sort of art can we make? What need is there right now? Just doing a lot of creative problem solving in that way. So it's been very invigorating as well as challenging.
Yeah. I mean, what was nice in the beginning of quarantine was that, like, because we thought it was only going to be such a short period of time we were going to be out of work, a lot of my clients were like, you're going to have a ton of time. So can you do X, like this amount of wigs? And I'm like, sure, yeah, no problem. And whatever, they got done, but like they got done in the beginning of quarantine. And then I ended up not seeing any of them for like months. So I was just like, what can I do to this? Like, it's so funny. I get these projects. I mean, I've been picking up new clients, which has been really, really great. Not as many as I would like, but still trying to keep my hands moving, still try to remember how to do hair. It's so funny to say that, but like, I spent a lot of quarantine with like my natural hair out. So I was just like, I'm not really doing anything, a little wash and go, and that's it. But, working on doing the thing, reminding myself that like I can ventilate. So I've been continuing to try and like because I am a wig builder. So I've been trying to do that as much as I possibly can. I'm not a licensed cosmetologist, but I'm now in school. I decided to enroll into cosmetology school during this time. The biggest thing for me was they offered it online first. And this is the first time ever in the history of cosmetology school that they are able to do that. So, I've been in Zoom school. I've been doing distance learning, which has been a very interesting process, but it's been nice because it's bringing that back. I'm like, oh yes, and talking to my educators, I tell them what I do and they're like, oh, okay. Because a lot of the times at cosmetology school, a lot of the students are like fresh out of high school. So it's been nice to just have those kinds of conversations again, like about hair and about makeup and about skincare and like all of that. And then other than that, like I really just, like I said before, like trying to use my platform. So I'm just trying to like work on like YouTube-y things and, collaborating with fellow artists. And like, I'm setting up photo shoots for all, just stuff. But it's funny because I'll go through a point where I'm like not doing anything. Elliott, you know this, I did my little like tiny, I built like a tiny dollhouse bedroom at one point during quarantine.
How farther than I did.
Well, I never finished. I'm gonna admit I never finished. So yeah, I got to a point where I was just like, enjoying being, I don't like using the term being a bum, but like laying on the couch. And then I was like, oh, now I'm really busy and now I have a lot to do. But I'm not complaining about it because miss it. I miss work. I walked through Times Square the other night and I was just like, this used to be my job. Yeah, so making things happen. This is a time where everybody's just trying to just make things happen and finding out what their true passion is and how they can help the change. And so it's been fun, honestly. Now it is, but
Right.
Before I was like, help, please.
Well, I always ask our guests to come up with questions. So if you've been hanging with What's the Tea for a while, you'll know that we like to come up with creative ways to ask how we're doing, what we're doing, all of those things. So our first question actually reflects very closely to what I was just asking about how you feel artistically, right? So this first question is from Monique.
Right.
So basically, how are you maintaining and still staying present and active in your field during this time, if you are? It seems like both of you are. So
yeah, but also too, like, I think that, we kind of did answer it, but also I feel like when I say how do you stay present, for me, sometimes when it comes to, there's so many like virtual performances and things happening, so many that I'm like, even keep up with everything that is happening, which is great. Like I'm all for it. And so for me, I'm just like, if I'm curious to know how other people other than myself are handling all of that, staying present with what's going on, because it's very easy for me, I just have my clients, but I'm not necessarily working directly with my musical team or like so I was just curious as to like, since you are heavily involved in opera, like how are you staying present within that tribe of people and that group, maybe to zero in and specify a little bit more?
Yeah, so I have been so grateful that Boston Lyric Opera has actually kept me engaged in their own company conversations about how they're dealing with everything. Basically, so the day that we shut down, we were about to open Norma. That was actually supposed to be my calling debut. I had been assistant directing, and I was switching over to calling stage manager for some of the performances. So I was like getting my score ready and like ready to go, and then it all shut down. And so right as that was happening, I remember my brain thinking, like, Monique, what you have been saying, like, oh, maybe this will be a month long. Maybe this is just a little group, and maybe this will be a nice welcome recharge time. But then some of the people at the company were like, I think we need to start thinking about how we reach our audiences in a different way. I'm like, do we really need to start strategizing like that? And just like trying to wrap my head around that. I was grateful to be a part of that conversation from early on, and then to continue having been a part of those conversations all throughout the summer, and then even now into their fall season, the reimagined season, as they're calling it. And part of that was coming up with this idea for a podcast that I'm producing now, called UtiliTEA, as Elliott has been describing earlier. And it was just a thought that came to me after talking to a fellow colleague of, we're trying to figure out how to create these musical moments, but maybe conversation is something that we can be having right now, just like this platform. Like, how do we get our colleagues together? And I'm somebody who I love the process of what we do. Like, that's a big part of the passion for me, is the process and how it comes to be. And so I nerd out over conversations like this. And so thinking about bringing people together in the industry, specifically people of the Boston Lyric Opera family, and just like letting them talk about the times they work together, the scores they're passionate about, anything else that's on their mind. And it actually ended up becoming this really beautiful platform for people to speak about social issues and the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, and how opera plays a role in that or does not play a role in that, and how we need to really reckon with that. And it's been a really amazing thing personally for me to be able to help support those conversations happening, but also for me to consider, okay, well, what do I want to prioritize now going forward in my own work in that regard? So it's been great to actually have like the company support of somebody saying, we want your opinion in here. So I again, I'm so grateful for that. And then in addition, is just continuing to have those kind of conversations with my own colleagues and friends in the industry, and asking ourselves, like, what are we doing and why does it matter?
What are we doing and why does it matter?
Why does it matter?
That's a good question. So I want to answer to. I'm gonna like answer them as we.
Please, no, please.
So I have been staying busy. So I am a part of the Solos Coalition, and I'm also part of Solos Coalition Young Artists, which is a part of the umbrella. And I've been involved with Black Opera Alliance, and also I'm now the, I guess I can say this officially, director of community engagement for River City Opera. And so,
Right?
so we're working to build that position, and make it a sustainable position. And then also, of course, doing What's the Tea with ACP and working with Michael Lewis, who's the founder of All Compass Projects, and a bunch of different projects that he's been working on. We have some really, really cool stuff coming out. Oh, and I'm also on the artistic advisory board for All Compass Projects. So it's been.
You're busy. You're both been busy during this quarantine.
Well, it's funny because at first I was kind of like, all right, so everything is canceled. What do I do? Because I'm not like, if I sit around and just like do nothing, I get just kind of like, it doesn't work for me. I like it makes me feel kind of sick almost, actually. Like it kind of affects me that way. So it's better for me to keep kind of moving and working towards something, even though, obviously sometimes that can be very stressful. However, the things that I'm involved in, I truly believe in, and I truly believe are essential parts of the music industry moving forward. They're companies that I see that are taking space and taking hold of these reins that I feel like have been kind of flopping, it's flopping everywhere for a long time. And so, yeah, so that's how I've kind of been being involved and staying active and present. I haven't, I mean, sad to say, I haven't been doing as much singing as I was at the beginning of the quarantine time, because I was still contracted, well, kind of through Opera Theater of St. Louis. So we were able to do some videos through them, which was really great. But it's mostly been on the like, not admin side, but on the, the back end, which I thought was such an interesting thing, because now I'm seeing all of the work that it takes to get things happening. And it's a lot of work. And so, right. And so I'm seeing parts of the industry that I was not necessarily familiar with. So that's why I thought it was so cool to be able to have you both on, because you see the parts that a lot of the singers that are on stage, or the musicians that are on stage, are like not privy to, right?
Right.
And I mean, I know, Melanie, you also are a musician. You got your master's in music, a singer, and I have not heard you sing yet, but all I'm saying is I hope I can hear it soon. But I have heard through the grapevine that you have a beautiful voice. So I'm wondering, could you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in doing kind of the backstage work? And Monique, I'm going to get to you with this question as well, because I think it's important to see how we can translate the skills that we have as musicians, or the skills that we have as a makeup and hair designer or artist, and translate that into the stage. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, glad to. Yeah. So while I was in grad school at the Boston Conservatory, I had at first moved to Boston thinking that I was going to get my master's in vocal pedagogy and performance and then go more of the singing voice specialist route. I was really nerding out about the whole mechanism of the voice. I thought I wanted to get my speech language pathology degree and go more voice scientist and and so I will nerd out about vocal mechanics any day with you if you want. Um, but while I was there, actually, as a work study job, I started assistant stage managing for some of the operas, and I wasn't ready to be cast in anything. So I started doing more of the backstage work. And the summer in between my first and second year of grad school, I was like, I'm just like really missing being part of the process. I asked the professors around, I was like, is there anything happening in Boston, any sort of opera, something? Let me build a flat, let me do something, or just sit in on a rehearsal room. I just want to learn. Like I learned how to do that. Just put me in somewhere. I just want to learn. And then thankfully there was a production of Albert Herring happening that summer, and I ended up assistant stage managing that and had no idea what I was doing. I had done some stage managing of theater things in like high school, but did not know the opera world of stage managing at all, which can be its own beast. And I kind of just fell in love with it and ended up doing more stage managing throughout my second year of grad school, and then also was really interested in directing and grateful for my professor there, Nathan Troop, who is now one of my dear mentor friends, who kind of took me under his wing and let me assist on all of his projects that he had, and I continue to assist him on projects when I'm able. And it was almost like this weird snowball effect of one opportunity happening after another, where I applied to get an internship in stage management at Aspen Opera Center, ended up getting that. And then the season after that, I started at BLO just as a rehearsal room assistant. And literally all of this was like, I had such big imposter syndrome because like, I don't actually know what I'm doing, but I'm just really excited to be here. That was like my whole attitude about it. Because I was like, I want to sit in an AGMA rehearsal and learn what's going on. Cool. So there was this giant production of Carmen that BLO was doing, and they needed help moving these cars in an ice rink that they were rehearsing. So great. I can help move a car, totally. So I would just like help with the scene transitions and then sit there and nerd out the whole time. And they ended up having me be their super title operator, and then I was operating the super titles for the following show that season. And then they had a production assistant position come up and asked if I wanted it. I said, heck yes. Great. Love that. And then the following season ended up becoming an AGMA ASM with them. And then it's just been this beautiful growing process of them kind of investing in me and trusting in what I was doing and letting me then become an emerging artist and assistant directing. And so very grateful to that company. And even now, like I was saying before, being involved with them. But it was like this following my gut instinct on what was feeling right, which I would have never anticipated 5 years ago after I graduated grad school that this is where I would be today. I mean, that was the pandemic time, but professionally, that I would have such a passion for the production side of things. I've always been passionate about just being a part of the process, as I said before. So when I realized that I couldn't really get into the room where it happened as a performer right away, I was too impatient to wait for my own performance. I'm like, no, I just put me in whatever capacity you need, and I will be there. And I just want to help make the art happen. Just like let me help. So yeah, it was a very roundabout way to get there, but it was one great opportunity after another, just kind of putting the tools in my tool belt.
Wow.
I mean, nobody's path is linear, though. Like a lot of times people, I shouldn't say nobody, but very rarely is your path linear. Like, I mean, for me, is it cool if I answer now? I'm like, I don't know.
Free flowing. There's no relaxed space. This is very,
It's just so funny because for me, like, when I grew up dancing, singing, did all the things. I also played sports. So I was just involved in a lot of stuff and got to high school. And I was like, I think I'm going to stop playing sports and focus on theater because I really, really love this. And then I decided to go to school to be an actress. And when I got to school, I was like, actually, maybe I don't. But I still like you said, loved being in that space, loved being just a part of it. And so I was working in the costume shop, like building and running wardrobe, because wigs and makeup wasn't a concentration when I first got there. Wigs still really isn't. If I remember correctly, they do a lot of makeup though. And so I learned, like, I did stage makeup, mold making, casting, prosthetics, all the things, you know, and, I left and I was designing hair and makeup professionally in Philly, and it was a wonderful time. I loved it. But I wasn't sure if theater was really where I wanted to stay. I wanted to stay in hair and makeup. So I started freelancing, doing some makeup retail, you know, but it's the live theater. The live theater definitely pulls you back. I mean, excuse me, I even have costume design for like high schools, and I ran a theatrical costume store for a little bit. I mean, just all the things, still just trying to stay in theater. And then, I worked at McCarter Theater in Princeton for about 4 or 5 seasons, and loved it because I was there. I wasn't there full time though, so I always had to do something else in conjunction with that, because you know how it is if you're not working full time. It's like the constant, which, Elliott, it's so funny that you were talking about not working and not hustling, and how when you're hustling, like, it stresses you out, but it also kind of fuels you. You're like jumping from gig to gig. You're like, I'm never in the same place for more than a couple of months, and I meet new people, and but also, like, where's the stability? So it's hard. It's stability. But yeah, and then I decided I didn't want to do the costume store anymore. I'm like, I need to go back to doing hair and makeup. I need to go back to doing live theater. Like, this is boring. It kept my creative juices flowing, which I loved. I was always doing something different, and I loved designing, but I love being present and being there for every show. And, I talk about how demanding my Broadway schedule is, 6 days a week, 8 days a week. It's a lot, I don't get to see my family very much, but I live for it. Like, I love it. I love being there every single day. I love doing the same. It's so funny. I have my track. I do the same things, but also it's never the same show, because something is always.
Isn't that just the best part of it? It's the best part.
It's so I meet a lot of hair and makeup artists who are like, I can't do theater anymore. I just want to go on a TV or film set, like do my little shoot, leave, whatever. It's something. And I'm like, yeah, but live theater, there's that adrenaline rush that you get. Like, once the downbeat starts, curtain goes up, and you're like, well, here we go.
Let's do it.
Yeah. And I mean, I worked so my first Broadway show was Wicked. Wicked, 15 years in, it's a well-oiled machine. Those people don't miss a beat. I was actually so surprised when, like, they were like, places, and people were just like
chilling.
I'm gonna get there when I need to be there. And I'm like, these people have been in this show for years, so they know what they're doing, And then I did King Kong, which King Kong was like a completely,
oh my gosh,
completely different beast. Literally. Completely different beast. But so much fun, being a part of that experience. And I came into King Kong, after they had opened, kind of not late in the game, but like I started there full time in May. We closed in August. Like, I wasn't there for very long. And then I started working at the Tina Turner, which I opened that show. I mean, I was able to see that process from start to not finish, because we're still thinking, yeah, but
rolling. You get
it. Yeah, come on. Yeah, like being a part of that process, and I mean, we have almost 200 wigs in our wig room, and we have about 85 wigs in every show. I mean, and it is just crazy. It is crazy. Tech was wild, but we love every minute of it. And I don't know where what I would be doing. Like, I'm like, well, obviously this is where I'm supposed to be, So it's just so funny, because my path was not linear at all. I mean, I worked at an Amazon warehouse at one point because I needed money. Like, that is where it took me, because yeah, but had to be very, very patient with myself and understand that it's going to be a process and I'll get there when I get there. And now I'm here and I'm like, yeah, this is it. So.
Wow.
It's so funny listening to you talk. I'm like, yeah, same, literally, same. So
it's kind of amazing. So I know I want to get to one of Melanie's questions, which is, what skills are you finding to be the most valuable? His mouth is hurting. What skills are you finding to be the most valuable to have in your work right now? So could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I was just thinking about this in the context of utility and us being these workers who make things happen, and how, Monique, I'm curious how your experiences, especially most recently on Broadway, like, are you finding that you developed any skills in your work that are now proving helpful in this time of pause for the industry, and like for you as a businesswoman as well?
Oh, okay. All right. It's just so funny because I don't know if this is necessarily a skill set that is specific to me. I think that you, Melanie, you might agree with this, but especially since we're talking about our paths and how we got here. I feel like my unwillingness to give up on myself, and my ability to persevere. I mean, that does happen sometimes in live theater. I find that there are times where things go awry, even problem solving. We'll even just say problem solving, because that is a skill. That is a skill. It's super important in live theater too, because things happen, mistakes happen. I mean, I can tell you, even with Tina, we had some issues. Our lead Tina got hurt. When we have to throw somebody on, keeping your composure, figuring things out. And so it's like, okay, well, if we do that every day at work, how can we do that now? And so it's like, I'm a creative person. I talk about designing, wanting to design, making things, working with my hands. So what can I continue to do now? So even if it's virtually, it's like, how can we figure out how to reach everyone and impact people's lives virtually? You just have to, it's a little critical thinking, problem solving. I think that is the biggest thing. And people don't think that that's a skill that you need working in live theater. And even, I don't even want to say live theater, hair and makeup.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to be specific about
that's a good point.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
I meet a lot of people who I tell them, I do hair and makeup for Broadway or theater, and they're like, oh, you play in wigs all day or whatever and beat people's faces. And I'm like, no, it actually takes a lot more than that. I mean, I've even had, I think of one specific time at Tina where our Tina that was on that particular day, she said, I can't do it. Mid-show, she's like, nope, I can't. And actually, I think it was at intermission. And I said, are you telling me at this very, very moment that you cannot do it? And I was in the supervisor track. So I was responsible for Tina at the time. And she was like, I can't. I said, okay, left, ran. And I didn't have the stage manager's phone number at the time. So I was just like, okay, I know exactly what I need to do. And I knew something in me told me to be prepared for that. Because you get your intuition, listen to your gut. I had already had our Tina covers wigs ready, already had them unblocked, ready for a new Tina to go, ran downstairs, looked at the person that was our new Tina, and I said, I need you to come upstairs with me right now. She goes, oh, and literally the stage manager said, so we are having a changeover. And she goes, oh, I said, sit down. And my biggest thing too is staying calm, because my energy will transfer to them, and I'm like, boop, 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 boop. And they're like, Monique, how much time do you need? I said, 5 minutes. They're like, 5 minutes. I said, 5 minutes. Oh, okay. all right, well, she'll be done in 5 minutes. We don't even have to add some extra time to intermission. And it's like problem solving, critical thinking, all this. So it's like in a pandemic, I understand that it's super duper hard, but you're like, no, I'm going to stay focused. I'm going to stay calm. I'm going to keep my composure, and I'm going to try to do everything I can I'm not trying to focus on money at this point, because I'm like, whatever, it'll come when it comes, but try to focus on keeping myself busy and making an impact in a positive way and making the best out of my time. So I feel like critical thinking, what we say, critical thinking,
Yep.
problem solving,
staying calm.
Stay calm, my composure. There it is.
Yeah. Monique, I love that you mentioned how critical it is for your energy to be one that is conducive to the positivity of the whole product, right? Because you have these artists, and Elliott, I'm sure you can speak to this, who are being asked to be vulnerable on stage, right? In whatever regard that means. And so there's this openness that they have to have that is receptive to the energy of those around them. And those of us that work backstage, if we're giving off any sort of vibes that are anything but calm and safe, that creates a whole bunch of chaos for the performers, and then the product suffers, So it's like not only for our own mental stability to be like, I know what I'm doing, having that confidence, but let me make sure that even if I'm freaking out inside, it'll be fine, because we're not doing open heart surgery here. We are all capable. We are on Broadway or in opera, whatever. Like we can do this. Let us, and I don't think that people realize how crucial that is, and how much we as backstage people have to be cognizant of that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And there's some of our colleagues who aren't cognizant of that, and that can be detrimental.
Yes, because I mean, speaking to that, being the person that the stage manager comes and gets, honey, if you, there have been times where, you're backstage or you're, doing something, and then out of the corner of your eye, you see a stage manager dart by. And at that moment, your ears perk up, okay? You're like, what's about to happen? But the thing about it is, it's such a unique skill set to stay. I love the thing about staying calm under pressure, because there is so much pressure there, because there's time, there's people, there's moving parts. I mean, talk about stage, there's moving sets. I mean, it can be a very dangerous place to work in if you're not careful, right?
Go back to candy.
Baby, okay. Seyoung, I saw you here.
Hi, Seyoung. Hi, Peter.
And so it's really, I feel like the skills that I have learned are attentiveness, and that are helping now, by being attentive when it comes to what's happening in the industry, right now. What can I do to help move the cause forward? Another skill that I feel like I've been using is kind of like, I don't know, like a skill of personality. I don't know if that's a skill or not. But being personable.
What do you mean by this? I think I know what you mean.
Yeah. What? Okay.
Like, because when you say personality, and I feel like we are also, we're on the production side, and you are a performer. You are a performer too. We're all performers, but we're all performers. Like when it comes to personality, right? So it's like we know how to maneuver in certain spaces. You say like personality, like because you are in this case, you're talking about working with all of these different organizations and working with all of these different people. And so it's like managing your personality and how to manage other personalities. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah. Kind of like being able to be self-reflective, understanding myself, and then understanding how I can use my personality to affect change.
Okay.
So whether that be being personable, I think is, I think that's a skill because not everyone is personable,
Mhm.
and it is something that you can work on, right? You can work on being an active listener. You can work on, communicating effectively, and through this time, I felt like I've found these like interests that I didn't know were interests, like hosting and like being on the other side of the like kind of admin work, and also being just creative. I've been doing a lot of like visuals and kind of
Mm.
creating things that way. And it's skills that I thought that I had that I may have like used a little bit, back in like MySpace days. You're just you're designing your page, okay?
And Mr. Coders.
Right,
We were coding and we didn't even know.
right. And so now it's so funny because I feel like these skills come back into play, and I have kind of I feel like there was two parts to my brain happening
Mhm.
before the pandemic hit, which was the artistic side that's focused on just the music part
Mhm.
and singing and doing that right. And then there's the like, I guess like the administrative side that I've always felt is like a little bit of a bubbling up there, but I just always kind of pushed it down because I was like, no, like there's this weird thought that like if you go into like admin or if you go into stage management or working, in the production staff, that you also like you have to like retire your other part, right? You have to
Mm.
retire the part that makes the music. And I think I've been finding the skill to merge those two together
Yeah.
and be creative in ways that I didn't know how to do it previously.
Right.
Like I knew it was there, but I didn't know what to do with
Mhm.
that creativity. And I feel like now it's starting to really come out, and I'm starting to hopefully build a foundation um, to make these things happen. Um, so yeah, that would be my answer to that. We actually have a question from one of our audience members.
Ooh.
Um, and they said, "Did you ever feel like giving up during your journey, and what got you over the hump?" It's a deep
Oh.
question.
I'm going to say yes. I think that the financial aspect of performing arts has always been like, I think, just the biggest hump, like the biggest, hurdle to get over.
Mhm.
Because sometimes it's like no matter how hard you're working, you're like, I still can't manage to make ends meet.
Mm,
And, you can't help but feel angry about the predicaments that you're put in. And you can't help but second guess your decision making. And, I found myself at one point being like, I don't really know like what I'm doing,
mhm,
I don't know that I ever really said that out loud. And I don't even know if I ever really admitted that to myself until
mm,
just recently, like until I made it. And
mm.
I say made it because I'm like, but until I got to a comfortable place.
Right.
Um, and I think that my way of kind of getting over the hump was I was surrounded by people that affirmed me and made me, and reminded me that I was talented and I could do this, and I just had to continue and be patient. And patience is something that I had to learn because I wanted that instant gratification and I wasn't getting it. And so I had to be patient with myself. And so I think I was really just surrounded by really good people and had to believe in myself that it was all going to happen eventually. And also, like, you just turned 30, I just turned 30. Like, we're still very young,
Mhm,
and it's this, we create these timelines in our head of when things should be happening for us.
Mm.
And no, you just just do the thing, be present, all these things that I've been learning over the past couple of years. And so yeah, I mean, I just had to be patient, and I'm glad that I was kind to myself, and that I was able to get over myself. Because too, like for me specifically, like I went from designing and like doing the thing and like being at the shows and all the stuff to like not doing anything at all. And it was hard, but it's like I had to also be realistic about where I was and what it is that I was doing. A wig and makeup designer, I was in Philadelphia, and it's like that's not really a thing. A lot of the times you're like costumes, and then you also design the wigs and makeup. Now it's very, I mean, now being in it a little bit more, I know that if I wanted to go back and do it, I know the necessary steps I need to do so. But, at the time I didn't know. I was fresh out of college. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, oh yeah, I'm riding this wave and I'm doing this thing. And then, the checks stopped coming in, and I was like, well, now I'm working at the mall. So, but yeah, so that's a very, very good question. I think that in theater, a lot of people end up in performing arts, people find themselves wanting to give up frequently. They're like, even now, I know a lot of people who are like, I'm over it. But I think it's because they're like, is theater actually going to come back, or how is theater going to come back? So,
Yeah.
Good question.
Totally. Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, I feel like I have, especially now during COVID times, like the existential dread kind of comes and goes in waves of like an every 3-day sort of cycle where I'm like, what am I doing? Like, do I really want to be doing this? And especially, a lot of it comes from the stability aspect of it, and needing to be our own advocates for ourselves and figure out like what our long-term goals are, and having to be creative in how we piecemeal together our income. It's a interesting journey to have to be on. So you really have to love what you're doing in order to want to get through that. And so what has gotten me through that is remembering why I love it, and letting that fuel it, and also just like returning to whatever that why is for myself. But then also reminding myself that should I decide to go on a different path, because like we were saying before, this was not a linear path for me, for Monique, for just like a lot of these people in this industry, that it's okay if you don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that everything that we do, even like the Amazon job, working at the mall, I've worked at many an office doing just like managerial type work.
Working at Ulta, we all done it.
Yes. Like all of these jobs, though, I think that that's still all putting tools in our tool belt and informs how we work, how we relate to other people. It gives us an informed skill set that we can take with us wherever we end up going, whether that's in the arts or not in the arts. And I think that to remind ourselves that any decision that we make is not a failure, that if we're reminding ourselves why we want to do what we want to do, and also recognizing that our goals can change at any moment, especially when we're in the midst of a pandemic, like permission to give yourself the kindness to not do the thing you thought you wanted to do. But also permission to do the thing you want to do and know that it's probably going to take a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Wow. That's deep. I too, I mean, I have felt that feeling like, why am I mean, as early as last summer, I was having a really tough time last summer artistically, because I ended up accepting a role that for me I was not ready for. And I didn't know that until I started doing it. And it's kind of like it's a really hard feeling when you have not had to experience that before. When you feel like you're letting down a team, or you're letting down some people who put trust in you, and it really messes with you mentally. It makes you feel like you're inadequate. And thankfully, the team that was at Santa Fe was so incredibly supportive and so helpful. However, my own mental blockages that were happening affected me, a couple of months after I got out from being there that summer. After I left that summer, I was in a place of like, I don't know if this is worth it. Like, I don't ever want to feel, I mean, I went into a slight depression, which I had not experienced before, thankfully. And I was like, I never want to feel like this ever again. And if part of doing this career is feeling that, I don't want it.
Mm.
But what I realized was that it's not, that was something that I was putting on myself, right? Like, that was my own self-saboteur coming in and being like, well, no, you aren't doing that thing, and you won't get another opportunity, and blah, blah, blah. And thankfully, a light bulb smacked me across the head when I was able to, when I got accepted into Opera Theater of St. Louis. And it restored, that's kind of the weird thing, is that sometimes you need signs. And I felt like I was in that moment looking for a sign to say, keep going at it. And that was the sign. And when I got that email, it really, it affected me fully, way more than I thought it would. And so I think maybe what gets me over the hump is taking time to reflect on, which actually this is a good segue. Taking time to reflect on the why for being in your chosen career. And has it, well, obviously the question says, has that changed or evolved since the pandemic? But so the why for me is that I had to and have to actively think about the effect of change that I can cause by using my voice. And that's not just by using my singing voice, but by using my voice as an advocate, using my voice as a person who wants change, who is fighting for change. And I hadn't associated the two in such a way until the pandemic started. And I hadn't used my full voice of, I'm educated about what does it mean to be a BIPOC person? What does it mean to be a person in the LGBTQ community? What does it mean to be a Black Lives advocate? What do these things mean in my life? And how can I take all of those in and then use those into my, and put that and infuse it into my art form? And I think that to answer that now, my why for being in my chosen career is to affect change. Before, it was to, affect the audience, but now it's to affect the world. And so I think that that's the evolution that has evolved. What a great transition. That's the evolution that has evolved. But what about for you two? What is your why? That's a deep question. And who asked this question? Who was it? It was Melanie. Deep, honey, deep.
I think so. When it comes to hair and makeup, I initially loved doing it because I love being the friend that tells you look good like I love being that friend. I like being the friend who's like, yes, girl, and I found that I was interacting with a lot of women who would look in the mirror and not love themselves. And so I was even doing some education at one point. I would go into people's homes who were like, I don't know how to do makeup, and I'd help them out. And in a way that made it easy for them, because if someone tells you they don't know how to do makeup and they really don't know how to do makeup, you can't be like, okay, well, contour this and contour that, right, and bake this and bake that. There's none of that. It's a very clean cut. These are the staples that you should have. And this is how we can do this thing to make it as easy and efficient for you. So that's how it really started. I really loved doing that and designing, and, the theatrical aspect of it was just like, I got to play and paint and transform people. And it was so much fun. And then I got to Broadway, and learned that I was like one of 6 Black people working in these rooms. And by 6, I mean 6 is like me just pulling a number out of, the air, but also it's a pretty accurate number. Especially when, you have these shows that are predominantly Black shows and the hair room is not reflecting of that. And then you hear horror stories, or you see like what is happening, and it's people not realizing that you can't just rip somebody's wig off because they're tender-headed. You can't just, we talk about edges, and we talk about preserving edges, and people not understanding what, tension alopecia is, and how, and these are things that I've just learned, and being a woman of color know about. It's so funny because I'm in cosmetology school. These are things we're talking about. When we're talking about hair loss, and scalp conditions, and etiquette, and things you should or shouldn't say to a Black woman about her hair. Things you should or shouldn't say to a Black woman or a woman of color about, skin tone and makeup applications and things of that nature. And so now, and honestly, it's evolved. I think it started early on, not during the pandemic. It's like when Corona first became a thing. We know when that was. That was like December, January. That was when it was first on everybody's radar, like the coronavirus. During that time, I started to see, hear things, see things, and I'm like, wow, there really is a shortage, and it's unfortunate. And so, Elliott, I've talked to you about the fact that I'm the only, Black woman you've ever worked, Black person you've ever worked with in hair and makeup. I've been a lot of people's first Black person who's ever, put their wig on, whatever. And even, it was so funny, even when I did King Kong, I met a woman who's in Tina with me, who I love her. Her name's Kayla, and she's fantastic. The first thing she said when she saw me, she looks at the supervisor, she goes, "It's about time." Okay. And I didn't realize, I didn't realize, like it dawned on me. I was like, oh, okay, all right, this is where I'm at. And building my confidence in Broadway and becoming a person that people are getting to know, and becoming a person who has some importance. I'm like, that has been a huge change for me. And so I've just been trying to figure out what that actually means moving forward, actually after the pandemic. Like, what do I want to do when Broadway comes back? Like, how do I want to impact people's lives when Broadway comes back? I try my best to be the most compassionate person backstage, especially in the hair room. And I try to be loving and caring and be that person that people remember. And so I'm hoping that going forward, I can continue to do that in a bigger way. And when I'm given the platform and when I'm given the mic, I plan to yell and scream and say whatever needs to be said. And I feel like I'm at a point where if I have the opportunity to do it, I have to just take the opportunity and not be afraid, of people looking down on me or saying negative things, because I think it's very easy to think negatively about the loud Black woman in the room. And before, I was afraid to be the loud Black woman in the room, but I'm like, yes, I'll be the loud Black woman in the room, and I will advocate for change, and I will say what needs to be said, because it's 2020. It's going to be 2021 when I go back to work. I'm like, we can't do this anymore. And also it would be really nice to just have more allies and have more people that look like me, who understand me, that I can work with. It's been really hard to find that. And so, yeah, the pandemic has really given me a lot more courage to step in an industry that I just kind of became a part of.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Beautiful.
That's so beautiful.
What about you, Melanie? What's your why for being in your chosen career?
It's funny I asked this question. I should probably have thought of like a I mean, I think first and foremost, in coming from the performing side of things, like the music is what always, especially for me specifically working in opera, like that is what fuels me. There's something about that transcendent experience that you get with the live orchestra and the live human voice mechanism, that there's just nothing like it. So from a foundational standpoint, it's lies in there, I think, for me. And as that has evolved over pandemic time and even prior to pandemic time, just exactly like you were saying, Ellie, of wanting to be an effect for change, and Monique as well, like really not being afraid to give voice to what needs to be said. I think that before there's such an element of like, well, we know what the problems are, but like we'll just talk about it in that meeting and in the EDI meeting later, like not
if
actually.
there is an EDI meeting.
Thank you.
Right.
So, but now what I'm loving about the fact that everybody has seemed to woken up to what needs to change, that's what it has been seeming over social media, is that I think that we're coming to this place where arts organizations are being held accountable by the public and by us workers, in this way of like, if you are not going to make the changes that you need to change, you're going to be left behind. And we're going to call you out for it. And so I feel like I've been just asking myself more and more, like, what can I do to help be that agent of change? And in considering the previous question that was asked of us too, of like, how do you get over the hump, and have you felt like giving up? So many times I felt like giving up during the pandemic, but just thinking, I feel like I have this calling to help be an agent of change in this time right now, especially. And I just, the change needs to happen so badly that I cannot give up on it. Like as much as we're moving towards it, I think that many companies are moving in the right direction, but there's also a lot of like dragging to happen. So I'm just like, how can I like use my voice to help advocate for others? How can my actions help advocate for others? Like what does that mean? And so that has been fueling the why for me.
I love that.
Yeah.
So something that kind of came up as an undertone, I think, in all of our answers to this question was our own specific, I guess, being like BIPOC people. And maybe that has fueled some of our why reasoning, right? Like maybe that has fueled some of the things that we've seen personally, some of the things that we've maybe experienced in our fields. So I wanted to actually transition into Monique's question, which is, have you had any positive or negative responses to your presence while working in the field, or not in the field, but in your field? Monique, could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I've been a lot of people's firsts, and it's been a very positive reaction to my presence. But also, but not from everyone. Sometimes I feel like there are times where the actors or the talent that I'm working with will think positively, but then my peers may not necessarily have that same energy. Not saying that I'm, a threat or anything, but I think that, it's you can tell when there's an energy shift. And even if it is from talent, because sometimes it can be from talent as well. So I was just curious. I love that I'm people's first, and Elliott, as sad as it sounds that I'm the only person, I love that I'm the only person that you.
Now I have to make a caveat. My friend Tiki the barber down in Florida, she was the first BIPOC person to ever work with makeup with me. But you were the first Black person to ever do wigs and makeup on me ever.
And I love it.
Ever.
And I love it.
Ever.
But also I'm like, oh God, I'm like, that's so, like it's a, I love it because I love you so much. And I'm like, I'm glad. Yeah. But also like, why? Why?
Right. That's the weird. I've found that to be very odd because we see that there is not a trend, but the people who are doing makeup and hair, I feel like for celebrities, are mostly people of color, from what I've seen in like the music space, like in the pop, R&B, hip hop space like that. I don't think like on TV, television, or movies, but when it comes to like personal makeup, I should say personal makeup stylist and hairstylist for celebrity musicians,
Right.
have a tendency to be people of color. From what I've seen on the outside looking in, now she's not my industry, so that's what I see. Right. But obviously that is not the case when it comes to most other spaces, right? We just see like, oh, blah 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 just made this wig for Kylie Jenner, or blah 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 is doing so and so's makeup. So it's interesting to see that there's this like space of like artists wanting to go for that, probably because it's more opportunity, maybe, or it seems like there's more opportunity. Right. But anyway, sorry, going back to the question.
No. Yes, and so I was just curious for either of you, whether it's walking into a room for an audition, or whether it's, and the energy is different, or whether it's being in a meeting or you introduce yourself as a stage manager, like what is it, what has that interaction been like? And have you, even if what are the responses, and have you always felt comfortable working in your field as well? Because I think that that's part of it. It's like, if you get a positive response, you're like, okay. But then if you get a negative response, it's like, okay, well, let me check in with myself, and how do I feel being here and working for this company, or working this event, or whatever.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I recognize that I, like, as a multicultural person, have white passing privilege, so I know that I carry that with me. But I have recognized a moment of being able to share a shared experience with a fellow BIPOC stage manager in a rehearsal room, when we were doing a production of Trouble in Tahiti and staging the What a Movie aria, which can be quite problematic in many ways, depending on how you stage it and how you interpret it and everything. And the director at the time, and I quote, "I want this to be as offensive as possible."
Oh God.
Not for any artistic integrity, but for the sake of just being offensive. Like I have heard justification if there was justification, but there wasn't, and it was just really obnoxious. Old white man, of course. But anyways, I remember sitting in that rehearsal room and feeling frozen in my seat, sitting like in my little stage left corner, and being like, what? And thankfully there was the other stage manager was in the room, was also a BIPOC, and both of us started texting each other like, is this happening? Like, what is this okay? And we both felt as though we couldn't say anything in that moment. This was a couple of years ago, because we were ASM, so like lower on the totem pole. We were also the only BIPOC people in the room out of everybody else, music staff, everybody included, and everybody was talking about it, and like there was no issues and whatever. And we ended up bringing it up to our boss and just saying like, we feel uncomfortable about this. I don't know what can be done, but this I don't think is okay. But it took a preview of the show at this like other event, for a student blogger, to call out how awful this was for any changes to actually happen to the staging. Which I was like, what? How? And like, then that little experience, and like how I know this is happening in bigger magnitudes across the industry, so I can't be the only person. But then also in thinking about like, thank goodness there was a fellow BIPOC person in the room that I could relate to in that moment. And in trying to think, part of another project I've taken on in this pandemic is helping bring together those in the opera staging staff community who identify as BIPOC, and how do we increase that number? Because I was trying to think of all the people that exist and could only count on my hand. I was like, wait, hold on, have I really? Oh no, really? I can't think of very many people. Like, this is a problem. So yeah, it's I haven't myself felt any negative experience in terms of directed at me in that way, but just in thinking about those issues that exist, it's a problem.
I can speak to that. So, I mean, thankfully, on first recollection, there has not been a specific targeted offense toward me, thankfully. Now, that goes into the workspace, but outside of the workspace, where we have to deal with donors and patrons and things like that, that becomes a little bit of an issue. It becomes a sort of tokenism. It becomes a space of, well, if you actually, something that I've experienced a lot, it'll be, thankfully, I've had the experience of having other Black singers in pretty much every program or show that I've done. There's always me and someone else, thank the Lord, because we have shared experiences, right? For the most part. I mean, not all Black people are the same. Not all BIPOC people are the same. So we all have experiences that are separate. But we have the common experience of dealing with microaggressions. So something that has happened so often, I was in a program and I was with two other Black guys who are singers, and daily they would confuse us. Daily, people on the staff, people in the office, directors. I mean, it was to the point where it was like, is this like, are you like joking? Because we also didn't look, well, anything alike. And like, I can understand confusing people when you look similar, but we looked nothing alike. The most that anyone could say was that we were chunky. That's about it. Other than that, no. So those are like the little things, right? Those are like those little.
I'm only laughing because I'm like,
because it's absurd.
I'm like, oh, what were they like? Okay, Terrence.
No, yeah. Actually, that
No.
didn't happen. So, and it's at any program. It's at any program that there's another Black singer. Like, I don't know if it's something about on stage they can't tell who's who, which I think is ridiculous. But like, oh yeah, when Terrence and I were there together, like we got mixed up often. So it's kind of weird.
Ridiculous.
It's ridiculous, and it happens. It has happened at every program where there's another Black male singer. No matter if they're big, small, tall, short. It's like when you're on the stage, some people cannot, they don't know. So for me, it's those little microaggressions, those little micro transgressions that like get under your skin. And for a long time, I didn't feel comfortable speaking about those. Now I feel much more empowered to speak up, and much more, I feel like if I don't speak up, then I'm not doing my part. But also I have had positive responses to my presence working in the field as well. I like that you said positive or negative, because there is a space of like, needing to go ahead, John. Go ahead. She gotta grab her computer. She gotta grab her computer charger, y'all. It's okay. So, it's interesting. There's a positive space too, um, where sometimes you come into a room and you spot the other person of color or more people of color, and you feel this like instant bond because you know that you can relate. Like when I saw, you know, there's been when I was in Santa Fe, there's been a one, a somewhat extra little essence of color there. And so that was nice, to be able to feel like you have a little bit of a community. And so there have been some positives to being, having my presence in the field. Um, yeah. And I feel like also the positives are that we can advocate for each other. When
Right.
there's more people that look like you that have experienced what you've experienced, you can get together and you can speak up. Just like you were saying, Melanie, you both got together and you spoke up. Where maybe if you didn't even have that other person, how do you get the courage? How do you get the confidence to go to your boss and say like, "Hey, this is not quite right."
Yeah.
Um, and so I think a little bit of both. A little bit of both. I think definitely more negative experiences when it comes to at least skin color. I was looking at the comments, and someone said, because of the color of your skin, does your voice backstage get the same respect? Are you allowed to be yourself and they accept who you are? That's actually a really good question for, I think, you both. Do you feel like um, does you feel like your voice backstage gets the same respect because if being a BIPOC person, or have you experienced anything off? I don't know.
Um, so I think that, I mean, I find myself, I code switch quite often.
I think that's, yeah.
Um, it's just part of, no, I don't think it's just part of the industry. I think it's just part of
It's
being,
the adaptation that we've had to do, right?
yeah. Um, I think that I am respected. Well, it depends. So I think that when it comes to, if I'm talking specifically, like if I talk about Tina, right? My cast, predominantly Black cast, um, you know, I am 100% respected by the cast, because they know that they can rely on me. They know that I have their best interest at heart. Um, in the beginning, it was a little rocky trying to figure out my place in the room because there are 5 hairstylists in the room. So it ends up being like a bit of a cat fight trying to figure out who's going to do what, and also I have a very big personality, and
A lovely personality.
Beautiful personality.
but also, like, a lot of people, especially if you are insecure about your abilities and insecure about your own your personality and how you can relate to other people, I think that it can be a little bit intimidating. And so I've dealt with that. I don't know that I think that once people warm up to me, I can be myself, but I can't be myself right from the beginning. Like, not even a little bit, because myself also means, calling a spade. Myself also means, being like, that actually isn't. I try to speak up for myself and speak up for other people as much as I possibly can. And I believe that that is a part of who I am as a person. And so I know that that is not who I can be from the beginning. When it comes to production, like when it comes to like the higher ups, I think I avoid just having those conversations, or avoided, because I think that's going to, but I think I avoided, being who I am and speaking up for. honestly, I did have a situation where I spoke up for myself, and it was really frustrating. I spoke up for myself to somebody in production, and I thought that it was a positive conversation, and I thought that we were going to get somewhere.
Mm.
And then after that person left, my supervisor told me that I needed to be careful about how I talk to people because they can be threatened by how forward I am, and how and it can be perceived as like an attitude, or like, and I'm like, because I'm being straightforward, I don't think that that's an attitude. I think that I don't feel like I need to, coddle anybody. If I need something, I'm going to say what I need, and I'm going to tell you how I feel. And I thought I had handled it in a very professional way, but so things happen, and I feel like it's very hit or miss. It just depends on the company that you keep.
Yeah.
It also depends on what spaces you're in. I
Mm.
was myself for the most part when I was, working in opera and working in Santa Fe, but there's professional you, and then there's fun you. So not that being professional isn't fun, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a good question though.
That's a great question.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting that we all have this interesting shared perspective, right? Like we have this viewpoint that is unique but also not unique, because we all three of us here, BIPOC people, we can usually see when things are happening in a space, right? And thankfully, I think that we are now feeling more empowered in all spaces to stand up and say, no, you're treating this is the wrong thing to do. You should not be doing that, and it's not okay. And I think that our industry, our theater industry as a whole, is starting to create an infrastructure in which the right ways to talk about these things are being discussed. There's a space to go to a higher level associate and say like, hey, this isn't working, or even frankly to go straight to the person and say, hey, have you thought about maybe saying this a different way, or have you, is there a way that we could maybe talk about this in a way that's not so, you know unaware. And so I think and I hope that our industry is becoming more open with having these kind of dialogues and speaking about how we're feeling, how other people are feeling. I mean, even the thing is, something that I hope that our audience members take away today is that even if you're not a part of a community, you can speak up for that community. Sometimes it helps to check in with someone from the community first before you speak on it. However, usually an injustice that a whole room sees as an injustice is an injustice, and you can use your voice to stand up and protect those people. Just the same way that I know that all three of us will do the same thing if we see something happening that we may not be a part of the community of. But yeah, so our talk, she got a little deep. we 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 aired it out. We let the girls know what's going on. And I just want to leave our conversation on a positive high note. So, no pun intended, soprano. But so I just want to ask one final question. What is one thing that you feel, what is one positive thing that you feel you have gained during the time of the pandemic so far? One positive thing. It could be something spiritual, it could be something physical, it could be something monetarily, it could be something familial. I'm going to say mine while you think. So I think mine is my positive thing is perspective. It's given me a lot of perspective when it comes to my own industry, what I want in my life, what I see my path as. It's given me perspective to say, like, this is how I want things to go, and hopefully these are the right steps to get there.
Okay.
I know it's a big question. It can be something even trivial. I mean, it could be something even as like a positive thing is spending more time with your family or like seeing a dog, like anything.
I would say for me, it's connection in
Mm,
family life and spending more time with them. I mean, so much in our industry, just as Monique had said before, it's like, oh no, I can't. I'm working. Like
mm,
I 6 days a week on Broadway, or like in tech rehearsals all the time for opera, whatever. It's a lot of missing big events and
mhm,
holidays and everything. And so I've really appreciated having that connection, and also the connection, I should say more intentional connection between the people that I care about, be them work colleagues or friends, that now we're all having to make the time to connect virtually in whatever way that means, or social distantly. That I've reconnected with a lot of really beautiful people in my life, and I'm just so grateful to have been able to just spend the time to do that.
Yeah.
mm,
Mine is kind of the same thing, but
mhm,
more along the lines of like support.
Mhm.
Um, especially when you are a freelancer or an independent contractor, independent, you are by yourself working on these gigs, doing these things. You work with other people, but you are your own boss and you're in charge of, your life and your path.
mhm,
And that mindset kind of sticks with you sometimes, and you always believe that you can like do everything by yourself and do everything on your own and suffer through things on your own and fix things on your own. And this time has given me the opportunity to really support and embrace and accept support and love from other
mm.
people. um,
Mm.
you
Wow.
know we've had the opportunity to just watch each other create and make things, and it's like, oh my god, I'm so proud of this person, I'm so proud of this, I'm so proud of you, I'm so proud. And I've also been trying to be more intentional in the way that I live my life, and that's kind of been my focus with these last couple of years. And so with that, I try to be vocal about how proud I am of people, how much I appreciate people, how much I love people. Because as we're seeing with this pandemic, life is very, very short.
Mhm,
We've all had to deal with so much loss during this time. And so whether it's direct or indirect, I mean, it's a lot of loss. And it could be lives, money, whatever, possessions, it doesn't matter. We're dealing with a lot right now. And so I've just been trying to be vocal about, how proud I am of the people that I love and care about, how supportive I am of the people that I love and care about, but also being willing to be like, I am not okay. And let me talk to
mm,
voice that and tell people that I am not okay. And, being willing to have those conversations, because those are sometimes admitting to yourself that you're not okay is not an easy thing.
mhm,
So, and during this time, like I had some moments where I was like, and that's why, like I said, finding the joy, because,
mhm,
you know, it's reality. This is what we're going through right now. And so, being able to stay connected and be supported and feel the love, and yes, spend time with my family, but like reconnect with other people and them being so supportive. And sometimes like people who have left and then popped up, I'm like, what are you doing here? But now I'm like, oh, thank you. Thank you so much, because times are, it's hard, but I'm actually, it's weird, but I'm grateful for
mm,
this.
Mm.
I'm
mm,
grateful for the space. I'm grateful for the time. I'm grateful for the opportunity that I've been given to really figure out who it is that I am and what I want with my life. And so, yeah, I mean, like I said, find the joy, figure it out, make it work. But
Yes.
yeah, it's been a gift and a curse. It's one of those. So
The bitter with the sweet.
okay.
The lemonade.
Okay.
We made our lemonade out of those lemons.
Yes, that was a pandemic. Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you both for taking time out and for coming on and talking with me and chatting with each other and presenting some very beautiful questions, thought-provoking questions, and being willing and willing to be open and honest and vulnerable. I think that's really beautiful, and I think you two are very beautiful, and I'm so appreciative of you.
Can I answer? There's a question in here. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm going to botch this name. Duryea?
Oh, Duryea. Mm-hmm.
Duryea. Ooh, told you I was going to botch it. Okay, so tension alopecia, if you're still here, tension alopecia is when hair is like ripped or pulled from the follicle. And usually that happens if somebody like puts their hair back in a really tight ponytail and leaves it, or if a wig is glued down and or pinned on and it is ripped off and without care, the hair will come out. And that is why a lot of women do not have edges. I wanted to answer that question. You said Isabella.
What's a good question? Listen,
that's a great
thank
question.
you.
Yeah.
Let me make sure I let you know. You can do your Googles, but I will make sure I let you know.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you both so much. And thank you for your knowledge and your support. And stick around after and we'll chat a little bit afterwards. So I'm going to give a little sign off here. Thank you all so much for watching today. It's been such a joy and pleasure being able to chat with my friends here and to be able to talk about all of these things that are going on in our lives. And yeah, thanks again. Make sure you join us again on Sunday, the 27th at 1 p.m. for our next What's the Tea with ACP. Thank you.